This episode is proudly supported by the new Capital Food Market Canberra, where you can explore the very best producers, artisans, fresh food providores and hospitality venues of the region. Here is Krista Potter from Deli Cravings.
It's going to be a beautiful marketplace. It's going to be busy, it's going to be vibrant, it's going to have choice. It's all under one roof, so the weather's not going to be a problem. Yeah, just can't wait to see the community all back.
For more information, go to capitalfoodmarket.com.au or visit the markets and feed your curiosity.
It always comes back to product and customers. That's why we started, just making really, really wonderful product that is part of people's lives every day.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The sourdough revolution had an overwhelming impact on bakeries in Australia. Although Canberra had some great specialty bakeries, today's guest has not only transformed the sector, but taken it onto a new path in the capital as well. Jarrod Deaton is the founder of 3 Mills Bakery in the ACT. Jarrod, how are you?
Oh, I'm really well. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to get you on the show. What an incredible food success story 3 Mills Bakery is. How are things going at the moment?
It's been a pretty turbulent time in the industry. I'm sure you know about that. It's pretty wild, but also just I guess we've hopped out the other side of it with a pretty wonderful team and some really nice opportunities in front of us. So the future looks great.
Give us a sense of scale and sort of what encompasses 3 Mills Bakery at the moment.
Today, about 140 of us on the team. We're servicing most of Canberra and kind of the immediate surrounding areas. And through COVID, we were kind of pushing into most of the East Coast, actually, with our frozen croissant range. And it was, we're split across 2 big production facilities, one for sourdough and one for pastry, and a couple of our own smaller cafes linked to those and separate as well. So that's our kind of reach at the moment and the team size. But yeah.
It really transformed and changed during that COVID period, like many businesses had to. But the surprising thing was you just mentioned that frozen range, just the change and impact of that. Take us through how that transformed your business a little bit.
Yeah, I have to sort of dive into that COVID story. For that one, it was sort of, we're largely a wholesale bakery at that time, and we just watched the sort of orders get cancelled daily. I was standing in the office, just one phone call after another, cancellations, and it was pretty dreadful. I think we in total lost about 78% of our business at that time, and there's not really much you could do about it. I think about day 2 or 2 days into it, we kind of had to do a really quick rethink, and the one thing that stood out was that the same amount of people that still existed in the market. We just weren't servicing them through cafes any longer. They were stuck in their homes. So unless we came up with a solution that, we could get to them really easily, we were screwed, to be honest. So it was born out of survival, I would say, more than anything. It wasn't any cutting edge, innovative processes behind it. It was how the hell do we get people baking these wonderful products in their own home? So yeah, it was really, we were lucky. We were testing that at Christmas time. A couple of our employees wanted to take some croissants with them to the coast. So they took some raw, unbaked pastry down there and left it on the bench overnight and threw it in the oven in the morning, and it worked. So we're thinking, this is a pretty cool product. I wonder how we can get it into the market. And then, a few months later, COVID hit. We just thought, damn, this is a great product. So, day one, we sort of launched with this brunch box, sourdough and bake at home croissants, and then just shot some really cool video around people having these great experiences at home and brunching at home because cafes were closed. So, you leave these pastries out on the bench and they sort of puff up overnight, and you get to egg wash them and throw them in the oven in the morning, and the smells are incredible, and all sorts of, kids getting on board, and there was just so much banter and back and forward, social media 20 hours a day, just responding to people about baking techniques in every type of oven you can imagine. It was a wild time. So that's how it all started.
It's interesting that you said that you're primarily wholesale before COVID, and now, sort of, as you mentioned, you've got the frozen range, you've got wholesale, but you've also got a number of cafes as well. Why did you branch out in that direction?
Yeah, one thing we've really enjoyed, like I've been in hospitality for a long time, and I think part of the experience of being in that kind of industry is the customer experience, the transaction over the counter. And we get that through, going to markets and the small shops that we've got linked to our wholesale operation. But the more wholesale you do, the less connection you have with end users, people enjoying the product. And I sort of noticed there was just this massive void in our operation. We make these great products, but you never get to see people's faces light up, and you never get to combine all of those elements together to create cool experiences, whether it's live baking in shops or just even having a chat over the coffee counter. And I think when we recognized that about a year ago, we thought we probably need to do a couple more shops and get ourselves out there and engage and create some really great experiences around the baking industry. So
did that sort of move, to be more consumer facing? Did that change your product range and the way that you looked at what you were doing?
It is now, yeah. Every day we battle with that, what's a wholesale product and what's retail, what do end users sort of really want, when they come in the door. Do they want variety or do they want their favourites? And it's literally a discussion that we have to have every day. At some point, I guess, they don't really coexist very well, especially if we're going to have stores in locations where we've got wholesale clients. We need that variety, the interest. And I think there's an expectation at a certain level in every part of the industry where you need to push the limits a little bit more. You need to be innovative and come up with new products. And certainly in the food world around seasonality, we haven't seen a lot of that in the baking industry. And, we've got a number of fine dining chefs on our team who have kind of hung up their nighttime aprons and sort of joined the days. And it's been wonderful. They're injecting a lot of life into baked goods that we never would have seen or haven't seen in the industry. So that's all kind of a now thing that we're starting to trickle through into our shops.
Well, I want to sort of go a bit deeper into sort of what you're doing with 3 Mills a little bit later on, but take us back to when you were young. Whereabouts did you grow up and what sort of role did food play?
Yeah, I'm country New South Wales in the Riverina, a little place called Deaton. And we lived on a small farm. We're in construction mostly, but small being kind of 50 or 60 acres, and lucerne and sheep and all those sort of that kind of farm. But it was we went into cropping. We unbeknownst to me at the time, I think we were influenced by food early on just because we grew it. We were pretty busy farm boys, essentially, just doing other things. And I don't think we valued it at the time, but we had this epic strawberry patch, this epic sort of little orchard. There was chook yards. We were collecting eggs every day. Kind of all these little things that we had to do to run the day-to-day farm. And most of the stuff that we were eating, I didn't know whether we were buying it in or it was from the veggie patch, but it was always from the veggie patch, as it turns out. And my dad he's an absolute perfectionist. So he would string line his strawberry beds and make sure that all the tomato stakes were exactly the right height in the same line, using string lines as he would to build a house. It was phenomenal. So like millimeter perfect. He was out there shaping his strawberry beds with a bricky's trowel to get them looking, spectacular before he planted them. It was just crazy. So it was a cool way to sort of, cool upbringing, cool way to grow up.
Were there any sort of dishes or feasts that you recall from that period of time that really sort of stand out in your memory?
We were simple eaters, but Mum always did the inside chores and Dad did the outside bit. We cooked on the barbecue all the time and camp ovens heaps. We sort of, there was maybe a decade there where we sort of lived on the banks of the Murrumbidgee for 4 months of the year. So we were camping in water skiing every day and all those sorts of things. I used to go to school from the river at the end of the year and at the start of the next year as well. So we do that over Christmas. And it was, we just learned to cook outside essentially. So camp islands and barbecues they featured pretty heavily.
Was a career in food something that you always considered?
No, I think I was one of the typical stories of falling into it and kind of falling in love with it along the way. But I moved to Canberra to study. I did landscape architecture as a degree. And, during that time, I think I just worked in hospitality. I love working. I was working 50 hours, first year of uni and in one of the bars in Belconnen, and it just sort of escalated from there and just really got into the industry and progressed through different parts of it, popped out the other side, just having a passion for it. I think when I considered sitting in an office all day and drafting or being on CAD, it was that, or do I open a cafe or get into my own little business? And I chose that.
Well, take us back to that time. What was it like opening your first cafe, and tell us a bit about it?
Young, naive, stupid, full of ego, all of those things. No, it was, there's good and bad bits, right? Obviously, I jumped in, and you need that kind of, that naivety, I think. Otherwise you'll talk yourself or get talked out of it. So I sort of jumped in. I think it was the ripe age at 23 or something. Opened a cafe and thought I knew everything, and that was a massive lesson along the way. It was a great time for that first sort of 12, 18 months. It worked well, but I remember looking around. I built it all, myself and using friends and family. I remember looking around and not having the clientele I thought I would attract. And I just it stagnated. I wasn't growing. It was doing okay. I'm sure you could turn up and live a great life doing it, but it wasn't really what I wanted. And I had a great relationship with the guys from Single Origin Roasters in Sydney at the time, and just was watching, I think at Lonsdale Street Roasters just started in Canberra. I was watching the kind of roasting scene begin to emerge and decided to jump on board. So we'd flipped it into 2 before 10 coffee roasters back then in around 2010, 2011. And it was, 20 grand credit card, no money, a bunch of mates from uni, like industrial designers and furniture makers. Yeah, it was just a wild crew of people, mishmashed. I've got photos of us pulling the ceiling out. I think the wires were still alive. It was mad. We'd carry this espresso bar out every morning at 6 a.m, carry it out, all the stainless that we had, set it up on trestles, carry the coffee machine out, set it up, and just leave the windows open so people could see what we were building inside. And it was such an amazing time. We got such a buy-in. People would come in and be all nosy and sort of look over your shoulder to see what you were working on that day. And we built this amazing place. It turned into a wonderful cafe at the time, and still is. They've gone on to sort of do great things. I had a house in Belconnen at the time and sold it to pay for the roaster. We borrowed a little 1 kilo coffee roaster from Sam Burns and I from Sam from Bio. I think it had him on the previous episode. We used to roast in the loading dock of that building in the afternoons to teach ourselves roasting, and then we left a space in the cafe for one day when this roaster would turn up, and just got on with it with an identity change, and waited for this roaster, and it turned up eventually, and we got it in and got going, and no end of problems from there on. But the business transformed. I think we doubled and tripled turnover from that point in the quarters following. So it was a remarkable change, and I was pretty pleased with the outcome. To be honest, it was a great time.
How did it transform you and your approach to business, given, you took the dive and changed the business model successfully?
Business is iterative, like you can't know everything in one go. You think you do. Even today, you think you sort of got a good handle on things, but you just don't. You learn so much with every new person that comes on and every challenge. I just think you can't do everything either. So at that time, I just needed a vehicle, a business to learn business, rostering, margins, where do I order food from, what happens here, and all the the back end problems you never really think about. You think, I'm just going to open a cafe and make coffee, and that's what I like doing. But the reality is, it's 5% about that, and probably 95% all the other things. So I think I learnt quickly. I'm very much a learner, by doing, and to have the opportunity to iterate like we did, and the team around to do it, it was an amazing experience. And since then, I kind of have really valued the journey and not getting caught up in, let's just get something out the door that's pretty good, and let's, work our ass off every day to make it better. And that was the first, time I learned that, I think. So
2 Before 10 has become an institution, but you moved on to create an award-winning venue in New Acton, A Baker. Tell us a little bit about that and how that started.
Yeah, so New Acton at the time was this emerging, precinct. There was so much hype about it, and the guys who put that precinct together they're very successful at doing precincts. I think there was a big movement back then. It was 2013 around precinct curation, and they put a really good mix of people together, and it was busy. It was hotels, it was celebrities coming through there, it was pumping on the weekends. It was wild, and I could see that kind of unfolding at the time, and thought, this side of the city really needed a bakery. And I used to make bread at home, and was a home baker, sort of more an enthusiast than having any skill, to be honest. But still, I thought, this is a great opportunity to assemble a team. I wonder if there's anyone out there who would do this. So it got complex. We built this basement bakery, an Australian spirits bar next to it that kind of looked onto the bakery. And then on the ground level, it was this restaurant cafe that turned into, all day dining kind of approach. We were doing events, and, it was wild. Like, it was honestly, some days it was just a sea of people down there. You think, how the hell are we getting to service all these people? So complex venue, everyone having different ideas of what they wanted. Got someone proposing to their, partner in one end of the venue, and someone having a coffee after, work or something, picking up a loaf of bread at the other. Like, it was just a melting pot of people. It was wild. It was a great time. So, but getting to that point, I think, we developed a reputation building 2 Before 10, and we proposed this idea to the guys who were sort of curating that precinct at the time, and they liked it. So yeah, we got up first dibs on a really great tenancy in the middle of that precinct, and took the opportunity on. Again, just ran at it like we do.
How did 3 Mills come about off the back of that?
Oh gosh, I don't know if that's a story for you. Look, the restaurant industry wasn't for me, right? So a couple of years into it, you understand it's a real labour of love, and I think being on the floor every night and running table service just wasn't for me. Actually, I sort of knew it early on and grit my teeth and got it done. But all the while I was probably thinking, maybe I'd made a mistake. It was a great venue. I should be grateful, but at the same time, I wasn't passionate about dinner service. So this idea of a baker, it was originally supposed to be a bakery, and it just morphed into a restaurant. It's just how people wanted to dine down there. So kind of just was along for the ride and didn't really get a say in it. So there was a period there where I tried to exit that business, and it didn't go well. So about a year there where I sort of looked at exiting, and in the end, the only option for me was to just leave investment on the table and hit the road. And yeah, it was definitely a low point. I'd sort of borrowed and, gotten everything out of my old businesses and really put everything on the line to be involved in the project. And to walk away, it felt destroyed. It was crazy. So it unraveled from that point where the decision to leave, obviously impacts you mentally and really hurts your identity and makes you question everything. So I interviewed at other places and thought, maybe this business thing's not for me. And I'm not really cut out for it. And so all of those questions rattled around. I, borrowed money, so it was sort of even bankruptcy discussions. It was a even low point in my journey. And I think, I think there was a couple of spots where I really tried to give myself a break for a few moments and look for opportunities in it. And that probably took every part of me to do, and thought maybe I could salvage something in all of this. And I came back to the idea of just loving bakeries and wishing I could just run a simple little bakery. And, at the time we had this basement, 35 square metre bakery, all the equipment down there. And I thought, it'd be great just to, extract that and set it up. So I went back and asked the business partners what they thought about doing, with it. And they weren't very keen on it, as it turns out. And we negotiated for me to take that part. I had one employee, myself, and some old sort of hodgepodge bakery equipment, which they made me purchase from myself. But we sort of extracted all that, 2-week turnaround, set the business up, found a location out at Canberra Airport. Thankfully, a guy just handed his keys back the day I inquired. An amazing, opportunity. He's like, I went out of this cafe, I inspected it the next day. And then within 2 weeks, all my mates and a truck were literally carried all the stuff out of the basement up the stairs and on our backs. And it was, we set it all up and lost one day of supply of bakery goods, and just got going. And it was one of those times where, your back's against the wall, it has to work, right? So you just push whatever it takes. And I think sometimes that's what's necessary to start something. So.
That is extraordinary given where 3 Mills is today. What was the first sort of range that you created for 3 Mills?
Yeah, we were lucky because we had that bakery going for years in the basement. So, we didn't have to do a lot of innovation. There was a period where we dabbled in wholesale there as well. I was running orders out in my old 90s Subaru out back with the seats folded down. I'm scooting around town sort of doing a couple of deliveries. So, we opened day one and had clients, had a handful of clients. So it really took the pressure off, plus the new cafe trade where we opened up in Mandurah Park. So it was, it kind of blew all the perceptions of, how to start a business. It was 2 weeks. It was rough, scrappy, let's get going, super honest service, kick-ass product. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. It's just bend over backwards to help people or get it to them. So those kind of values have stuck around, to be honest. That's how we still talk about those days. But it was, we de-risked it a little bit. We took on that lease for 1 year, and I didn't want to back myself too much. I was still battling mentally at that time, questioning everything every day, and I was working 7 days a week for 100 days straight, and then I'd have a day off and get back into it again. And it was a all or nothing kind of push. Yeah.
Well, you're building a business, but you're also rebuilding yourself and your life as well after coming out of that. Was there a real turning point for you personally and with the business?
Yeah. Immediately. I just didn't want to say it. It worked from week one. There was already easy. It was easy to grow it early on. There was no one servicing Canberra at a high level with, the sort of pastries and sourdough that were pushing out the door. There was all coming in from Sydney at the time. And the years in the industry of working alongside, almost being competitor with people. When we extracted and moved out to the airport, well, no one's competitor. Or all of a sudden this guy that knew the industry and had relationships and could come up with products that, I thought the cafe industry would enjoy. And there was just no barriers. We weren't competing. It was such a lovely conversation to have, and people embraced the product. So growth kind of happened naturally. And we were super generous. Like, we never went anywhere empty-handed. I remember stories of, I did all the deliveries and everything, and, for the first 18 months every day, and you sort of pull up at the lights and in the van, and I'd always have bread on the front seat. I was handing baguette. Everyone's like, oh, 3 meals, I've heard about you guys. And, I'd hand baguettes out through the window of the car to the other car next to me. And, just in the dark, like 5 o'clock in the morning or something somewhere. It must have been so random for that person to get that. But it really helped build the brand, I think.
Well, those stories you still hear around Canberra, that generosity continues even though the business is so much bigger. How do you build a team, and create that atmosphere and energy to fulfill that and keep that sort of original premise?
Yeah. And when you're small, I think those sorts of ideas, you got to have the idea to be that way to start with. And I think it was probably, my ego was squashed at the time. I was coming back from the depths, and I think there's a real honesty to that. You just don't you don't have your chest out anymore, and you're not trying too hard to please anybody. You just focus on the service and the quality of the product. And I think that was a real moment where that came through. I was brutally honest with myself and everybody around me, whether the product or the service was on point or not. And I think coming out of the industry after so many years as well, and knowing the real pressures that people are facing around pricing and the quality of goods, the expectation of their clients, that their clients have on them, I kind of knew that intimately. I'd felt it. And so if one of our guys stuffed the product up or, delivered some pretty shitty service or whatever, like that just got my blood boiling. Like we would have some pretty honest discussions about that. Like it's just not acceptable, it's people's livelihoods. And I really felt it and tried to make sure that everybody else felt it as well. So we would talk, and I think those ideas, as a small team, ideas rub off on everybody around you. They can hear you on the phone, they can see you solving problems, they can, it's easy. As the team gets bigger, it is more challenging to make sure that those things filter down or filter out from the centre. It's really challenging.
The evolution of Canberra's food scene has been extraordinary over the last decade, and you've been a big part of that as well. What do you love about what's going on in Canberra?
It's amazing, to watch that. I think I opened in 2008, the first business, so it was just a desert back then. It's come so far, such a long way. It's a pretty worldly bunch, though. Canberra's an amazing location for a food business. Well-travelled people, well-educated, and just pro-Canberra, like really, even more so. And I think that's probably everywhere as well, especially after COVID, everyone went hyper-local. But people just bloody love food. So what an amazing location to be opening food businesses and, celebrating that. And I think given that what's going on around, I know we don't produce a heap of our own food here, but there is definitely a movement that, looking at the momentum that we've already generated in Canberra so far, I think combining with the clientele that are here, the customers, the future's pretty spectacular. Like it's an amazing location for food and wine and beer, to be honest.
Canberra has an incredibly mature fresh food market culture with lots of farmers markets, but also two big markets, one in the south and one in the north, that sort of anchor the population. You've chosen to be part of the big new capital food market that's opening. Tell us a little bit about that and the importance of market culture in Canberra.
Yeah, it's like any city, right? I think that's the beating heart of a city. I always sort of travel and remember going to, markets internationally. You'd always sort of try and stop in and see what the culture's all about, just be a part of it. It feels like you've stepped out of the glossy brochures of a city and stepped into how people actually live when you explore food markets around the world. And I think seeing that in Canberra as well, we've had a presence at the big markets for years, on the south side as well. So it was sort of only natural for us to really want to be a part of the new capital food market. The conversation with those guys has been going on for 2.5 years, so it was you sort of have to have this long game approach to get in or to get the opportunity to be involved in a precinct like that, and then just be patient, wait. we're really looking forward to it. I think it's an amazing market for us in the future. I think it's just a brilliant part of the landscape in Belconnen as well. I hope it will take it and sort of look at the success of that, and look at the success of Fish Week and do more of them, do another one in Canberra. So it's awesome.
We briefly touched on the fact that you've got the 3 Mills cafes now as well, but they all seem to be sort of slightly different to each other rather than just cookie cutter sort of cafes. Will the approach at the Capital Food Market be quite different to some of the other cafes you have?
Yeah, we're leaning into that way more. There's this really delicate balance of, we've made this investment in these wonderful facilities in Fish Week, and you kind of want to use that equipment. But at the same time, the cookie cutter approach just doesn't excite any of us, especially in the food world. Like the minute somebody gets big and tries to do multiple stores that all look the same, behave the same, and the team are using scripts, it's just, it's like it's a dreadful existence. It really doesn't do anything to celebrate food or anything, the customer experience. So I think for us, we'll lean into that harder and harder as it goes on. Each shop will be different. And we're looking at, companies like Aesop Skincare and those kind of models where they've changed the store and they're winning awards for their kind of fit outs, and it all feels very different each store. I think it gives people a reason to move around to each of your locations and look at each store independently. And then how that translates to our team, I guess, is, live baking on site, very different product offer, potentially different hours, different everything. We've got to give people a reason to go and visit each of those stores and really do the right thing by the local clientele as well. Not everybody wants the same things in different parts of the city.
You created arguably Canberra's most successful food brand at a time that was incredibly challenging personally for you. How have you changed over the last few years?
So, gosh, some good and bad. It's bad side is, I'll start with that bit. The bigger you get, you end up becoming more disconnected. I think you end up fighting bigger fires and trying to do things at scale and really maximize your time. So I think one of the things I probably face at the moment is that we're running customer-centric business from an office. It just doesn't work, so at some point you need to change that. And also being involved in the team, with the teams, as the team gets bigger, you need that cross-pollination of ideas. So that's a real challenge. And I think sitting in an office all day does change you. And I think, looking at numbers, looking at data, looking at sort of, it's just, again, it comes back to, is this really what I got into the business to do? It's very necessary. Someone has to do it. So for now, that's a change that I have to accept and keep pushing forward. But I don't want it to be the future. I'd prefer to find myself in a different, having a different role, or at least playing, an active role back at the front. So the good side, it's like the best personal development, growth program you could ever go on, I think, businesses, honestly. Like it's raw, it's honest, brutal. There's no escape. You literally, if you make a stuff up, it's on you. There's no way of hiding. Financially, professionally, people won't stick with you. They'll leave. Customers are terrible. Some days they'll just, great. They'll throw things right in your face. It's like you've been around long enough to know that it's full on. So I think any business is like that. The food industry is very much that. So I think, you learn to get your shit together, basically.
Well, it's absolutely incredible what you've created, and very much looking forward to see what you do from here. What do you love about what you do?
It always comes back to product and customer. It's what I spoke about at the beginning. That's why we started. So, just making really, really wonderful product that is part of people's lives every day. It's an everyday buy, pretty much. Bread and pastries, it's certainly weekly or fortnightly for a lot of people. So I think that's the driver. But you've got to combine that with the people side, working with really great people here, solving massive, juicy problems for ourselves, potentially for the industry long term, and customers as well, just watching people interact with a product and have a great time. It's probably the simplest way I can put it. It's the best part of the job.
Well, Jarrod, you're an absolute inspiration, and it's an honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a part of your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
You're a wonderful man. Thank you for having me on. It's great to chat with you.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.